In a world of Democrats,
there will be time for them to make profits. Now's not that time.
And Republicans.
I've abandoned free market principles to save the free market system.
You need a voice of liberty. Look no further. You've found it. Tom Woods. Beware, citizen. You are now departing from the world of allowable opinion. The Tom Woods Show.
Welcome, everybody. It's Wednesday, September 17th, 2014, and I am grateful to yet another listener of the Tom Woods Show for yet another excellent guest suggestion. Carlos Miller, producer and creator of photographyisnotacrime.com. You're going to love my conversation with Carlos, and if you enjoy this episode, you'll enjoy them all, so make sure and subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher, which you can do easily at tomwoodsradio.com for your daily serving of liberty education. Of course, you can also get a free ebook of transcripts of all the interviews I did in 2013 on all different topics. It's a primer on liberty, and it's free. Get that over at my personal site, tomwoods.com. I have a special page for it, tomwoods.com/woodsbook. Let's turn our attention right now to Carlos Miller. Carlos, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me on.
I'm so thrilled to be able to do this show Monday through Friday. It gives me an opportunity to get to know all kinds of things that for some reason I was not aware of. I get to talk to people whose work I didn't know about, and you are one of those people. I'm sorry to say I was not familiar with what you were doing, but what's great is this morning when I was leaving the house to come talk to you, I said, well, today I'm interviewing a guy named Carlos Miller. He's got a website called photographyisnotacrime.com. And my wife said, oh, yeah, that's a great site. So I thought, that's awesome. She's more plugged in than I am. That is just fantastic.
Well, you married well. Congratulations.
Apparently so, right? I keep getting reminded of that every day. All right. Let's give the overview, not of how you got the site started. I do want to ask you about that. But just tell us, what does photographyisnotacrime.com do? What can people expect to find there?
Okay, Photography Is Not a Crime, or PINAC, as we call it, is basically a site where I report on instances of people who are getting their First Amendment rights violated for recording police in public, for the most part. We also report on cops who get caught on camera abusing citizens and not abiding by the law or contradicting their reports. You know, they write their version of the truth, and suddenly a camera shows, a video pops up, and it shows the other version of the truth. We are growing, and it started off as a one-man blog. Now we're growing into a full-fledged news site.
Now, how did you get started doing this? This is an interesting story. It wasn't just that one day you thought, this will be an interesting public service, I'll open up this website. It had to do with something that happened to you.
Yes, and I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist for a long time. As I told you before, I'm 46 years old, so I spent years working for newspapers as a police reporter. I used to cover the cop beat, and I would take pictures, I would write stories. And in 2007, I was living in Miami, and I was freelancing because I got away from the newspaper business. I did not see a future in newspapers, and I was freelancing. I was trying to do my own thing, and I came across a group of cops while I was working on a story, and these cops were making an arrest. And the story I was working on was about this neighborhood that was up and coming. Supposedly, it was always very gritty. There was always prostitution and drugs, and still like that. But at this point, you know, there was businesses moving into the neighborhood. So that was the story. So I was walking around interviewing people, taking pictures, and naturally, crime is part of the story. So when I saw these cops making an arrest, I started taking pictures. And my intention was to take some pictures with a telephoto lens and move on. I didn't think that arrest was particularly interesting. It was just, you know, another guy getting arrested. But then they told me, you have to move on. This is a private matter. You can't be taking pictures. I told them, this is a public road. I'm a reporter. You know, please allow me to do my job. Then they came after me. They actually left that guy alone. They came after me, 5 police officers, City of Miami police officers. And they told me, keep moving, continue moving, walk away, and I continued taking photos. And then they pounced on me, arrested me. They beat me up. They pounded my head into the pavement. They busted a camera lens, and they threw me in jail for 16 hours on 9 misdemeanor charges. So while I was sitting in jail, I read the arrest report, because here in Miami, they give you the arrest report while you're sitting in jail. and the arrest report claimed I was standing in the middle of the street blocking traffic. And this is a busy road. This is not a street you would actually want to stand in, and block traffic, because traffic won't stop for you here. So,
Okay.
So I was like, wow, I can't wait till I get out of the jail and get my camera to see, because I know I took some pictures, and if they delete the photos, I know I will be able to recover them, and let's see what happens. So when I got out of jail, I got my camera back. The photos were not deleted, and the last photo I took, which is the photo you'll see at the top of my website, was the officers approaching me, and the street, Biscayne Boulevard, is behind them. So it clearly showed that I was not in the middle of the street when they arrested me. So I was very naive at the time regarding this issue. I thought, okay, well, the state attorney's office, they'll drop this and we'll move on.
Mm-hmm.
But they did not. And they insisted on pursuing this and insisted on taking this to court. They wanted me to accept either one or two things, either time served in jail and that's it, so which would be a conviction, or a plea down to a deal where I would still have to admit to standing in the middle of the street. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to accept any plea deal. I just wanted to get cleared of all these charges. So I started the blog 2 months later after the arrest, because initially it got some media attention, and it was all over the blogosphere at the time. This is when I discovered the media, the blogosphere, because I was a newspaper reporter. So my views were at the time was like, okay, if it's not in a newspaper or it's not in a traditional news site, then it's not worthy of reading. But then, Then I discovered something different. I realized there's a lot of good content out there, a lot of good bloggers out there getting attention. And so I started my blog, Photography is Not a Crime, and with the intention of documenting my trial and to raise awareness of my trial and to raise awareness of this issue. What happened was, my blog started in 2007, in April 2007. YouTube started in 2006, I believe. That's when it started getting very popular. And in 2007, they introduced the iPhone. So people, for the first time in history, had the ability to record video on a very simple device and upload it to the internet within minutes. That's something we've never had before, and it was very revolutionary. So people were walking around, and they would see cops abusing a citizen, and they would shoot video, and a lot of times the cops would come after them. And so these people will go online, or the cops would chase them away or threaten them with arrest. These people will come back and say, well, I'm not sure if this was correct. I believe I have the right to record, but I'm not sure. So they'll go online and they would Google, and at the time there was not a whole lot of information out there on this issue. So they would come across my blog, and I would be like, well, I'm here just writing about my trial, but yeah, sure, I'll be happy to write your story. And that's where it started. I started writing everybody's story because people would just reach out to me. And the news was not reporting these issues, so I became that source of these stories. And the issue kept growing. People started getting more familiar with their rights. YouTube became more popular. LiveLeak became popular, which is another internet video platform. And people, were just more familiar with the cameras and videos. Because before, to shoot videos, it was very complicated. You would have to be very dedicated to learn how to shoot a video camera and edit it and all that stuff. But, with the iPhone and these devices like the Flip, all you have to do is point and shoot, basically, and upload. So that's what started happening. Society started changing, and people started seeing that cops they started getting a different impression of police. Police, for the most part, people gave them respect. They gave them the benefit of the doubt. As I mentioned before, everything they wrote, people took it as truth. You go to court, as a judge and a jury, the cop said, this is what happened. Defendant says, this is what happened, and the court system basically believes the cop. But then you introduce video, and then you see, these cops are not always telling the truth, and it's an irregular thing. What we discovered through video, that cops on a regular basis stretch the truth. And these are not isolated incidents. These are not a few bad apples. This is part of the culture of police, where they do this on a regular basis, and people's eyes are open right now. So a lot of people are basically taking their cameras and they're going out there and they're making a stand, and they're saying, well, I'm going to do my part because we want cops. And I include myself, I include most of my readers. We might criticize police, but we want police to be good. We want cops to respect the law, to respect our rights. And we have no respect for bad cops. And the problem is, there's just a lot of bad cops, and the leadership of police is not doing anything about it. and that's where we're staying right now.
Well, tell me, Carlos, did your views on the police, these views that you've just described now, were these the views that you had all during the years that you were a reporter, or did they change dramatically after that terrible incident that occurred?
Yes, they continue to change. And, you know, I used to be a police reporter for these newspapers, so I would go out there and I would write a lot about cops who done bad. I would expose a lot of cops, but at the same time, I had a lot of friends who were cops and people who would talk to me, people who would give me information, and people, you know, but I was that newspaper guy, so they knew who I was, they respected who I was, so they wouldn't do anything that crazy in front of me. But then when I became just a regular reporter with no press badge or anything, you know, that night when I was arrested, if I had been working for the Arizona Republic, which I used to work at before, which is a very large newspaper, and if I had my credentials, then I would have been left alone. Or say I would have been working for the Miami Herald down here, I would have been left alone. But I was just a guy with no press credentials, which it really doesn't make a difference. You know, the First Amendment is our press credentials, you know, by law. But, you know, cops see the press credentials, they'll treat you different. So, you know, so I started seeing a different side of it, and I'm seeing all these videos, and my opinions continue to get very cynical, and I get very jaded, and it's sometimes I have to step back and just kind of try to look at the big picture. But the big picture is what I'm telling you is the culture is rotten. People always tell me, well, you don't write about the good cops. There are a lot of good cops out there. And yes, it's true. There are a lot of good cops out there. There are cops who would respect our rights, and cops who would not lie on their reports, and they will actually help you like they're supposed to. But those cops can't do anything about the bad cops. If they do, they get retaliated against. So they have to just basically just turn their heads, which makes them accessories to whatever crime the cop is committing. So it's a very rotten culture I've discovered, and it's now I'm not really people tell me all the time, you know, you have to tone it down to reach a larger audience. But it's just hard to, because when you see this on a continuous basis, every single day, people are sending me videos every day, and it's just somebody has to go out there and just call it for what it is.
Yeah.
This is rotten culture.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many areas of life in which I know that if I just pretended that we're dealing with a minor problem of a few bad apples, I'd get a much bigger audience. But my sense of injustice makes it impossible for me to spin it that way. I've got to tell people that I perceive this as a systemic issue that will not be resolved by picking out one or two individuals as fall guys. Now, what I want to know, though, is are there any laws relating to the recording of police encounters, so that if people try to do what you're doing, are they going to be thrown in jail? Now, by the way, those are two different questions, aren't they? Maybe there aren't any laws, but they'll throw you in jail anyway on some trumped-up charge. But strictly speaking, do they have any grounds for telling you to put that camera away?
No, they don't. And we've gone through this issue over the years. You know, a few years ago, they were using the wiretapping laws in some states. You know, wiretapping, these are laws that were meant to prevent the recording of telephone conversations without the other, you know, I can't record a person's conversation unless I tell the other person. But then they were twisting that law to say you're not allowed to record me in public, even though there's a guy holding a camera. It's very obvious he's recording. But you know, the courts have decided, they've judged, they've ruled on the side of the citizen to record. And it's all very open now. The only state that has a wiretapping law that's a little strict is Massachusetts, and that law says you are not allowed to secretly record people in public who have no expectation of privacy. You mean, so you have to basically hold up the camera. All you have to do is actually hold up the camera. You don't even have to tell them, just make it visible.
Right.
You just can't make a deliberate attempt to secretly record them. But even in other states, like in Florida or Illinois or any states that do have what is called the two-party consent state or the all-party consent state, that all parties must be advised. If the people do not have an expectation of privacy, as you don't have in public, especially during a traffic stop or any police interaction, then you can record them secretly if you want to.
Well, one of the themes of this program is that from the time people are in elementary school, we're trained to think a certain way about a lot of government institutions, that these institutions are populated by crusaders for justice who are innocently pursuing the common good, and they represent you, and they want to make sure that your rights are protected and all that. And we're taught to have what I think is a superstitious reverence for institutions, for example, like the police. Now, as you say, it's not metaphysically impossible that you could have a good police officer, but the attitude should not be one of reverence and waving incense in front of them. It should be skepticism, especially given the power that they have, the authority they have. But yet we're taught to give them the benefit of the doubt. The knee-jerk public response is the police are probably in the right, because you're probably dealing with the dregs of society. You can't ever give them the benefit of the doubt. That's the attitude people have, and that's one of the things that you're up against.
Yeah, well, that attitude is changing. I've seen that change over the years. There's a lot of people who have reached out to me who said, you've opened my eyes, because and the videos don't lie. I mean, you put the videos up day after day after day after day. People, they see a trend. They see this is not good, and police. I believe police have changed themselves. They've become, now as in the news ever since Ferguson, they've become a lot more militarized.
Right.
The training has changed. The training, they used to train. I talked to officers long-time officers who've been on the force for 20 years or more, and they tell me, we used to be trained to be able to dissolve a situation without resorting to physical force. They used to be trained to kind of talk people down, to de-escalate a situation. And now they're just trained to view everybody as the enemy. So the cops have created this us versus them mentality where they think they're at war, and they got all these war machines, and they're walking around with these tanks, and they got all this camouflage, and they're on city streets. I mean, I don't even know why they have to wear camouflage on city streets, because it makes us stick out more. But that's the mentality. They want us to be afraid of them. And if we don't comply, it used to be to serve or protect, and now it's comply or die. And if we don't comply, it doesn't matter. If they're giving us an unlawful order, they will tase us, they will beat us, they'll arrest us, and then we'll have to deal with it later. But that's the attitude they have, and people are waking up. People are seeing it for what it is, and they've lost respect for the police. They've lost credibility. The cops have lost credibility, and the cops, they have to. It's upon themselves to change this, because even if they continue this course and people don't respect them, they might have all this power to throw us in jail, but then people are not going to care when they get killed. People are not going to care when they need help. People are not going to give them tips to solve crimes. But, they need the community to help them do their jobs. And now the community is turning against them because of the way they've treated us.
I agree with you that attitudes are changing among the public. I think the reason some people tend to give the police the benefit of the doubt is also that although I'm sure police abuse existed in the past as well, as you say, I think the police didn't have some of the attitudes they've been trained to have today. They didn't have some of the approaches, some of the training that they have today. And people are acting as if the police of today are the same thing as the police they grew up with, and they're not. And secondly, you're talking to somebody who grew up a traditional law and order conservative, that if you were opposed to the police, or you had suspicion toward the police, or you were complaining about the police, that probably meant you were some kind of troublemaking pinko commie who hated America. That was just about where I was. And for somebody like me to get to a point now where I say, it's so funny that I go around telling people, you can't trust the government. However, with the police, everything they say is like sacred scripture. There's a disconnect there, and there are a lot of people like me who grew up the way I did, who now look back on it and say, boy, was I snowed.
Yeah. What's interesting is this issue of skepticism towards police is basically crosses all partisan lines, and the right to record crosses all partisan lines. And where before we were so divided between partisan lines, this is what's bringing us together. Now is really not the right versus left, but now is state versus the people, and specifically the police, because these are the extension of the state that that uses force to try to control the people. So that's where we're at now. People are just not, and it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse because the cops are becoming. They don't really see the big picture. The cops, all they do is see is, they don't know what we're going through. They don't know how tough our jobs are. And so they don't really see, we're just exercising our First Amendment right, and we're thrown in jail. We don't like that. I don't care how tough your job is, because they chose that job. No one forced them into that job, so they can easily get another job if they can't handle the stress of that job.
Right.
So that's it. You know, I mean, I complain about my job. I can go days without sleeping because I have to write and edit and do all kinds of things. Well, this is the job I chose. You know, I can easily get another job. And same with cops, but they don't see it that way. So they expect us to just bow down and give up our rights because they have a tough job. And they don't have it. I mean, maybe they have sometimes some aspects of their job may be tough, but, you know, they have a lot of power. They have a lot of benefits that other people don't have. They have pensions and they can commit crime and still get paid. You know, I mean, they can beat people up and still get paid. You can't do that any other job. And they protect themselves. I call them the blue mafia. And that's the point where I reached. That's how cynical I've become, where I've seen the whole culture as rotten, where there is like a blue mafia, where even if you complain to the cop, you get arrested by a cop and you file a complaint, it's not going anywhere. They're going to protect themselves. You just don't even, if you want to file a complaint, you do it only to get it on the record of the cops in case there's a pattern and we can build a pattern. But, you know, don't expect anything to happen to that cop because it won't. And don't even expect the legal system to help you out unless you have it on camera. If you don't have it on camera, then just forget about it. So that's why it's important to record every interaction with cops. You know, if a cop has nothing to hide, then he'll be like, fine. You know, I stopped you for speeding, and here's your ticket. Let me have your license, and just move on. I don't care if you record me. But then you have the cops like, stop recording me. You know, it's against the law. They still say that. It's against the law when everybody knows it's not against the law. The courts have ruled over and over and over and over that it is the right to record. There's no law that says you have the right to record, but there's no law that says we don't have the right to record.
Right. And that's of course what matters. Now, give me one example of a recent story that you've run over at your site to give people a flavor of it.
Well, okay, the one that sticks out was one from D.C., Washington, D.C., where a guy was on a bicycle, and he was riding his bicycle in the city. He came across some cops making an arrest, so he started recording. He was about 50 feet away. And then you got this very arrogant bully of a cop who walks up to him, and he tells him, he gives him the same old story. Well, it's against the law to record, or I can confiscate your camera as evidence because you're recording, which is not true, or you have to leave. You know, or then the cop proceeded to block off the area with his yellow crime tape that they do. But then other people were just walking through. You have an old lady walking through. You have a guy skateboarding through the crime scene, the alleged crime scene, while the guy with the camera was forced to be on the other side of the yellow crime tape. And then it turns out that guy was an editor for the Washington Post and the police chief of the Metropolitan Police Department. You know, she came out with a policy a couple of years ago, so in 2011, saying, yeah, we have the right, you know, telling her officers that citizens have the right to record and do not arrest citizens because they had gotten sued a few times. And then you still have this cop doing that. So it just falls on deaf ears. And even though the police chief came out and said, well, yeah, I was shocked at this video, she didn't do anything. She didn't say, I'm gonna discipline this officer. No, she said it's under investigation, which means just go away. We're not gonna do anything about it. That's what that means. Because it doesn't take, all you have to do is watch that video for 5 minutes to investigate it, to see what really happened. And so nothing's happening. So we just have to continue being strong and exposing the hypocrisy and learning how to read through what I call the police PR spin machine, because they spin everything. And this is why, again, it's important to record everything, because they'll spin it. I mean, they'll get a video where it shows a cop beating somebody up, and you can see the cop's like 3 times his size, and the guy's not resisting, and they'll spin it to say, well, yeah, the cop was in fear for his life, so he had to defend himself. And you look at, well, if this cop was in fear for his life, then maybe he needs another job, because we don't need cops that scared to be on the beat. We need cops who have a sense of bravery and who are not afraid of a phone. This is what we're seeing now.
Carlos, before I let you go, tell us about the Citizen Journalist's Photography Handbook.
Yes, that's a book I wrote that came out this year. I use a lot of my experiences, a lot of my expertise, because I went to school for journalism. I spent almost 10 years writing for newspapers, and now 7 years writing the blog. And the rise of citizen journalism is a very important thing, because the media, the mainstream media, they've gone down. You know, we're going through a big transition in the media. We're going from old media to new media. New media is all of us. All of us, we have that power to record. We have, this is the first time in history that we have true freedom of the press. Before, freedom of the press was guaranteed to those who had access to the press. But then if you have a cell phone, a smartphone, and access to the internet, you have the ability to publish your videos, your photos, or even your ideas, your thoughts, your stories on the internet for the world to see. That's your press right there. That's your platform. So this is true freedom of the press. We definitely should take advantage of that. And so the book is, what I've learned over the years is a lot of people, they want to exercise this right and utilize this freedom of the press, but they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to approach it. They're not really educated, because you have to be trained to do it. You have to know what you're doing. So that's the book. I kind of teach people how to approach situations, how to, stand up to cops. I give them case studies and personal stories. I talk about public records, talk about the laws, the wiretapping laws, again, recording in courtrooms. So it's basically dummies, one of those dummy books, the Citizen Journalism book for dummies, except it's not a dummy book. It's just a different publisher. But yes, you can buy it on Amazon. You go on my site. It's on the left-hand side. You click on that, and Carlos Miller is the author, of course, and the Citizen Journalist Photography Handbook.
Well, we're going to link to it in the show notes to this episode. Well, the website is photographyisnotacrime.com. We're talking to Carlos Miller. Carlos, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time today and your insights. The work you're doing is fantastic. It's compelling, very important. I'm just going to urge people to check it out. I mean, you're on the front lines out there, and I hope people are going to not only visit your site but support you in what you're doing. Thanks so much again for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me on, Tom.
Okay, a couple quick things before I let you go. I have revamped and updated the Supporting Listeners program. What I want you to do is, if you like this show, right, if you enjoy this show, you say, boy, this is just great. Every single day I get an interesting guest, and it's just wonderful. And through thick and thin, whether he's in town or out of town, Woods comes through. He gives me this daily serving of liberty education. It's fantastic. If you feel that way, I just want you to look at it. Okay, just go to supportinglisteners.com. Even if you have absolutely no intention whatsoever of supporting the show, go to supportinglisteners.com and just look at it. I want you to just look at the Tom Woods bag of goodies, because you're just not going to believe what it's not some PBS umbrella. I'm thinking I may take a picture of myself frowning at a PBS umbrella, and then in the next frame it'll be me with a sack full of presents. Right? Because that's the Tom Woods bag of goodies. You get more than you give. I mean, maybe that should be the motto. You get more than you give if you're a supporting listener. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, I hate to spoil the surprise by telling you everything that's there. I got mini courses just for you guys. I got severe discounts. I got transcripts. I got my new book for you. I got signed books coming for you in the mail. I got 270 video or audio files, depending on how you like them, of Western civilization, government, which is my government course may as well be an anti-government course. All kinds of stuff like this. Lifetime subscriptions to Liberty Classroom. All kinds of stuff waiting for you guys. So do that for me as a favor. I want that to be in the back of your head. Gosh, it's the end of the day. I knew I was supposed to do something. Yes, that's right. You were going to do a favor to Tom Woods. Just look at it. All you got to do is look at it at supportinglisteners.com. All right, remember, I'm going to be in New York City October 11th for Liberty Fest. LFNYC is the site to find out more information and get 50% off tickets with coupon code WOODS. All right, we got a couple more great guests coming up this week. Friday in particular, you're going to want to tune in because Scott Horton returns to the show. You love Scott Horton. We're going to talk about ISIS and Obama and what in the heck is going on. That's going to be a do-not-miss show. So make sure you subscribe on iTunes so you don't miss any of these episodes. Thanks for listening, everybody. See you tomorrow.
The Tom Woods Show.